Let me ask you something, and I need you to really sit with this before you answer. When was the last time you woke up and decided, today is for me, not for your inbox, not for your boss, not for the social media feed you've already scrolled through before your feet even hit the floor? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and thought, I'm going to pour everything I have into becoming the person I'm supposed to be? If that question makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the first sign that something true just landed. Here's what most people won't admit. They are living their entire lives on someone else's schedule, chasing someone else's definition of success, and consuming someone else's highlight reel, while their own story collects dust. The people who break free from that cycle, they don't have more hours in the day. They don't have better genetics or trust funds. They figured out one thing that most people spend decades avoiding. You are the most important project you will ever work on. This audiobook is your blueprint. By the time you finish listening, you'll have a complete practical system for making yourself your number one priority. Not in a way that makes you selfish or isolated, but in a way that makes you undeniable. The kind of person who walks into a room and raises the energy. The kind of person whose growth inspires others to grow. The kind of person who looks back on their life and feels no regret. The question isn't whether you need to rebuild yourself. You already know the answer to that. The real question is, are you finally ready to stop letting your potential expire quietly? Let's begin. The Scattered Mind Epidemic. There is a silent crisis happening right now, and it's not in the news, not in a hospital, and not somewhere across the world. It's happening inside your own skull. Every single morning, millions of Americans wake up and immediately begin destroying their own potential. The alarm goes off, and within 60 seconds, they're already gone. Sucked into a vortex of notifications, news feeds, text threads, and algorithmic content designed by billion-dollar companies to capture attention and never let it go. This is what I call the scattered mind epidemic. And it is the single greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you are capable of living. Here's what that looks like in real time. You wake up, grab your phone, and before you've had a single conscious thought of your own, your brain has already processed dozens of other people's opinions, problems, and perfectly filtered moments. You scroll past someone's vacation photos. You read a headline that makes your stomach drop. You respond to 3 messages that could have waited until after breakfast. And just like that, your mind belongs to everyone but you. This is not a minor inconvenience. This is a catastrophic misallocation of your most precious resource. Focused attention. Think about what that morning routine is actually saying. When you reach for your phone before you reach for your goals, you are declaring, without words, that everyone else's world is more urgent than building your own. When you spend your commute doom-scrolling through crises you cannot solve, you are flooding your nervous system with anxiety that serves no productive function. When your lunch break disappears into other people's success stories, you are training your brain to worship comparison instead of creation. The numbers back this up in a sobering way. The average American checks their phone over 90 times a day, roughly once every 10 minutes during waking hours. And here's where it gets alarming. Research from the University of California, Irvine found that after a single digital interruption, the human brain needs an average of 23 minutes to fully return to deep, focused work. Do the math. If you're interrupting yourself every 10 minutes but need 23 minutes to recover each time, you are never actually focused. Not really. You are living in a permanent state of mental fragmentation. And fragmented minds cannot build extraordinary lives. But the scattered mind epidemic isn't just about screen time. It runs deeper than that. It shows up in how you relate to your own problems. Instead of asking, what can I control right now? Your habits, your mindset, your skills, your daily choices. You spiral into what you can't control. The economy, your neighbor's opinion, that awkward thing you said in a meeting 3 weeks ago. You spend mental calories analyzing situations you cannot change. You rehearse arguments that will never happen. You predict catastrophes that never arrive. This external obsession creates a vicious loop. The more your focus bleeds outward, the less you develop inward. The less you develop inward, the more you crave external stimulation, validation, and direction. And the more dependent you become on all of that, the less ownership you have over your own life. Meanwhile, the people who achieve extraordinary results operate by a fundamentally different code. They treat their attention like it is currency, because it is. They refuse to spend it on anything that doesn't return value toward their growth. They don't grab their phones when they wake up. They begin the day with practices that build internal strength, movement, silence, focused reading, journaling, or deliberate planning. They don't consume random content throughout the day. Every piece of information they let in serves a specific purpose. And they don't waste a single ounce of mental energy on things outside their control. They direct 100% of their available focus toward what they can actually influence: their thoughts, their actions, their habits, and their trajectory. This concentrated attention creates a compounding effect that most people never experienced. It is the difference between a scattered beam of light and a laser that cuts through steel. Here is the truth you need to hear. Your life will not change until you reclaim your attention. As long as your focus is scattered, your results will be scattered. As long as your energy is fragmented, your progress will be fragmented. And before you worry, this isn't about becoming a hermit or abandoning your social life. It's about something simpler and far more powerful. It's about recognizing that the most capable, most generous, most impactful version of you can only exist if you first invest in building it. The scattered mind epidemic has tricked you into believing that focusing on yourself is selfish. The truth is the complete opposite. People who never develop themselves become emotional anchors on everyone around them, constantly seeking reassurance, direction, and validation because they never built those qualities within themselves. People who invest in their own reconstruction become sources of strength. They stabilize every room they enter because they've done the internal work to become solid. Starting now, every time your focus wanders to the external, recognize it as a withdrawal from your own future. Every time you choose the scroll over the skill, you are choosing a moment of stimulation over a lifetime of transformation. The people living the lives you admire aren't more gifted than you. They simply learn to aim all of their energy at the one target that changes everything, and themselves. That's the mission. Let's talk about why it matters more than anything else. The self-focus foundation. Here is something the personal development world gets completely wrong. Self-focus is not a character flaw. It is not narcissism with a motivational poster slapped on top. It is not something you need to apologize for or justify to people who made you feel guilty for wanting more from your life. Self-focus is the foundation of every meaningful contribution you will ever make. To your family, your career, your community, and your world. Most people in America were raised with an unspoken belief. Putting others first is noble, and putting yourself first is selfish. That conditioning is beautiful in theory and devastating in practice, because here's what actually happens to people who live by that rule without balance. They give until they're empty. They help from a place of exhaustion. They show up for everyone else while quietly falling apart inside. and eventually they have nothing real left to offer. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You've heard that before. But here's the part most people skip. You can't fill the cup if you never stop long enough to look at it. Think about the oxygen mask instruction on every commercial flight you've ever taken. Put your own mask on first before assisting others. This isn't a policy designed to make people selfish in emergencies. It is survival logic. If you pass out, you save no one. If you stay conscious, you can save everyone around you. The same principle governs every dimension of your life. If you are mentally depleted, you cannot think clearly for the people who depend on you. If you are emotionally fragile, you cannot be a stable presence in anyone's storm. If you are physically burned out, you cannot show up fully for the work that matters most to you. Self-focus, done right, is a form of radical responsibility. True self-focus is the intentional daily practice of developing your character, your skills, your mental clarity, your physical health, and your emotional intelligence. It is the commitment to becoming someone who adds real value to the world rather than draining it. Someone who solves problems because they've solved their own internal ones first. And here's what happens when you make that commitment seriously. You don't just improve yourself. You improve every relationship, every professional environment, and every space you occupy. A person who has built genuine mental discipline doesn't collapse under pressure. They become the calm center that others orbit during a crisis. A person who has developed a rare skill brings that capability to every room, every team, every conversation. A person who has done the emotional work to become self-aware and regulated doesn't create unnecessary drama. They dissolve it. The ripple effect of one person choosing to rebuild themselves is staggering, and it all starts with the decision to take your own development seriously. Self-focus rests on 4 principles that every high performer in business, athletics, relationships, and creative work has internalized, often without being able to name them. The first is personal responsibility. Everything in your current life, the parts you love and the parts you hate, exist because of choices you made, choices you allowed, or circumstances you haven't yet figured out how to change. This isn't blame. This is liberation. Because if your choices created your current reality, your future choices can create a different one. The second is relentless improvement, not perfection, improvement. Self-focused people don't wake up trying to be flawless. They wake up trying to be slightly better than yesterday. And because small, consistent improvements compound over time, like interest in a savings account, what begins as modest progress eventually becomes extraordinary results. The third is authentic development. This isn't about becoming the person other people expect you to be, or chasing a version of success that looks impressive on paper, but feels hollow in your chest. It is about becoming the truest, most capable version of who you actually are. It is about closing the gap between who you show the world and who you know yourself to be. The fourth is service through strength. The ultimate destination of self-focus isn't isolation, it's impact. When you have genuinely built something within yourself, you can give to others without resentment, without depletion, and without strings attached. You help from a place of overflow, not obligation. Now, a critical distinction. There is a version of self-focus that is healthy and a version that is toxic. Healthy self-focus makes you more valuable, more grounded, and more capable of connection. Toxic self-absorption makes you a burden, someone who uses working on myself as a reason to avoid accountability and connection. The difference? Intention. Healthy self-focus is designed to make you better for the world. Unhealthy self-absorption is designed to protect you from it. One builds character, The other feeds ego. One creates abundance. The other operates from scarcity. If you're listening to this, you already know which one you're after. The world is desperate for people who have done the real internal work. People who are mentally steady, emotionally intelligent, and genuinely skilled at what they do. Your decision to become one of those people is not a small thing. It is a complete reorientation of your life's direction. Today, stop thinking of self-development as a luxury you'll get to someday. Start treating it as the most important infrastructure project of your life, because without it, everything else you build is sitting on an unstable foundation. How your brain actually changes. Here is the most important thing nobody told you about personal transformation. Your brain is actively working against it. Not because your brain is your enemy, but because your brain has one primary directive that overrides everything else. Keep you alive and conserve energy. And the most efficient way it does that is by turning familiar patterns into automatic programs that run in the background. No conscious effort required. When you try to change those patterns, your brain doesn't celebrate. It sounds an alarm. Neuroscientists call this the prediction machine model. Your brain constantly makes predictions about what will happen next based on your past experiences. When those predictions match reality, your brain rewards the behavior. When you introduce something unfamiliar, a new habit, a new mindset, a new response, your brain classifies it as an unknown variable, and unknowns to your brain are potential threats. This is why change can feel genuinely uncomfortable, not just psychologically but physically. Your body releases stress hormones. Your thoughts generate resistance. A quiet voice in the back of your mind whispers, "This isn't who you are. Go back to what you know." Most people mistake this biological resistance for evidence that they're not capable of changing. They're wrong. It's simply evidence that their brain is doing its job. The question is whether you're going to manage the brain or be managed by it. The good news? The science of neuroplasticity has revealed that your brain can be rewired at any age, under any circumstances, with the right approach. And there are specific principles that make this rewiring not just possible, but reliable. Principle 1. Repetition with intention. Your brain is like a trail through dense forest. The more often you walk a particular path, the clearer and easier it becomes. The paths you abandon overgrow with time. Every time you practice a new thought, behavior, or response with conscious attention, you are literally carving new neural infrastructure. The key word is intentional. Random repetition creates random results. Deliberate repetition, focused, purposeful, directional, creates lasting change. Principle 2. Emotional significance. Your brain doesn't treat all experiences equally. It prioritizes the ones that carry emotional weight. This is why a single traumatic event can change someone permanently, while 100 uneventful days vanish from memory. You can use this mechanism intentionally. When you pair a new behavior with a strong positive emotion, pride, excitement, a deep sense of accomplishment, you accelerate the rewiring dramatically. Make your growth moments feel like something. Principle 3. Environmental consistency. Your brain uses the environment around you as a trigger system for automatic behaviors. The coffee mug on your desk, the notification sound from your phone, the route you drive to work. These cues launch behavioral scripts that run without conscious thought. If you want to change your behaviors, you either change the environment that triggers the old scripts, or you deliberately create new associations with existing cues. Your surroundings are not neutral. They are always voting for or against your transformation. Principle 4. Identity alignment. This one is the most powerful and the most overlooked. Your brain works relentlessly to maintain consistency with the story you tell yourself about who you are. If your identity is, "I'm someone who struggles with discipline," your brain will filter your experiences to confirm that story and filter out evidence that contradicts it. But the moment you begin identifying as someone who is building discipline, your brain shifts its whole operating framework. It starts looking for evidence that confirms this new story. Identity is the deepest lever of all. Understanding these four principles allows you to design your reconstruction process intelligently, not by white-knuckling through resistance, but by engineering conditions that make change feel natural. There is another crucial distinction to understand before you begin: the difference between surface-level change and structural change. Most people who try to improve their lives make a critical mistake. They change behaviors without changing the underlying beliefs, mental models, and identity patterns that generated those behaviors in the first place. This is why most attempts at self-improvement fail. You are treating symptoms while the root cause remains untouched. Real reconstruction goes deep. It means examining the beliefs you hold about yourself, many of which were handed to you by parents, teachers, and culture before you were old enough to question them. It means rebuilding your mental operating system from the inside out. And this process must address 5 interconnected areas simultaneously: mental models, the frameworks you use to interpret reality and make decisions; emotional patterns, your habitual responses to stress, conflict, failure, and opportunity; behavioral systems, the consistent daily actions that produce your results; physical practices, how you care for and use your body as a performance platform; environmental design, how your surroundings reinforce or undermine your growth. These 5 areas function as a system. Change one without addressing the others, and the unchanged areas will eventually drag you back. Align all 5 around the same vision, and transformation becomes almost inevitable. One more thing about the reconstruction process that most people get wrong: setbacks are not failures. They are data. Your brain will test your commitment to new patterns repeatedly. It will create situations designed to trigger your old responses, because it is genuinely trying to protect you by returning to what it knows. These tests are not evidence that you can't change. They are the actual mechanism of change. Every time you choose the new response instead of the old reflex, you strengthen the new neural pathway. Every time you fall back into the old pattern, notice it without shame and return to your intention. You are practicing the most important skill in the reconstruction process: recovery. Approach this process like a scientist, not a moralist. You are not good or bad based on your progress. You are collecting data, running experiments, and adjusting your approach based on results. This mindset removes the emotional charge from setbacks and keeps you moving forward with clarity rather than guilt. Building your daily self-focus system. Let me tell you the secret that separates people who actually transform their lives from people who spend years talking about it. Systems beat intentions. Every single time. The difference between the person who rebuilds themselves and the person who remains stuck is not willpower. It is not natural talent. It is not even desire, because most stuck people desperately want to change. The difference is whether they have a daily self-focus system that delivers consistent progress, regardless of motivation, mood, or circumstances. Here's why systems work when intentions don't. Willpower is finite. Research consistently shows that self-control depletes throughout the day, like a muscle under sustained load. Every decision you make, even small ones, draws from the same reserve. By evening, most people have almost nothing left. That's why you eat well in the morning and cave to junk food at night. It's not weakness. It's biology. When you build a system, you replace the need for willpower with the reliability of automaticity. You don't have to decide what to work on each morning. You don't have to motivate yourself every day. You simply follow the process you've already designed when you were thinking clearly. Your daily self-focus system should be built around 5 core components, each addressing a different dimension of personal reconstruction. Component 1, mental conditioning. Specific daily practices that sharpen your mind for clarity, focus, and resilience. This might look like 10 minutes of meditation, a focused journaling session, visualization of your goals and identity, or intentional reading that challenges and expands your thinking. The goal is to start each day owning your mental state before the world tries to rent it. Component 2, skill development. Deliberate daily practice in the specific abilities that will make you more valuable, more capable, and more competitive. Not passive learning, active practice. This could be a professional skill, a creative craft, a communication discipline, or a technical capability. Choose the skill that will most dramatically improve your trajectory and practice it with focused intensity every single day. Component 3, physical optimization. Your physical state is not separate from your mental performance. It is the hardware everything runs on. Daily movement, structured exercise, and conscious attention to your physical energy directly impact your ability to focus, regulate emotions, and sustain effort over time. This component isn't optional. It is foundational. Component 4, emotional regulation. Practices that help you understand, process, and direct your emotional energy rather than being controlled by it. This might include reflection exercises at the end of the day, breath work during stressful moments, journaling prompts that surface buried feelings, or any practice that builds the gap between stimulus and response. Emotional mastery is a competitive advantage in every area of life. Component 5, strategic review. Regular time spent evaluating your progress, adjusting your approach, and ensuring that your daily actions are actually aligned with your long-term vision. Without this component, you can work hard in the wrong direction for months without realizing it. Weekly check-ins and monthly deep reviews are non-negotiable for anyone serious about reconstruction. Now, and this is critical, the system you design needs to fit your actual life, not your ideal one. The most common mistake people make when building self-improvement routines is designing for perfect conditions. They plan for the version of their life where nothing goes wrong, no one needs anything, and they have unlimited time and energy. That life does not exist. And when real life shows up, as it always does, the system collapses. Designed for the messy, imperfect, overcommitted, occasionally exhausted reality of your actual daily existence. That means starting with the minimum effective dose for each component. What is the smallest amount of practice in each area that will still create meaningful forward motion? Maybe it's 8 minutes of focused reading instead of 45. Maybe it's a 15-minute workout instead of an hour. Maybe it's 5 minutes of breath work instead of a full meditation session. The goal is not to create a system that impresses people. The goal is to create a system you will actually maintain when life gets hard. And life will get hard. Build your system around your natural energy rhythms, not against them. If you're sharpest in the early morning, protect those hours for your highest leverage self-focus activities before the demands of the day begin. If your evenings tend to be chaotic and depleted, don't schedule crucial practices there. Implement gradually. Don't launch all 5 components at once. That's the fastest route to overwhelm and abandonment. Add 1 component at a time. Spend 1 to 2 weeks making it automatic. Then layer in the next. Your brain adapts to each change before you introduce the next challenge. build tracking into the system. But keep it simple. A check mark for each completed practice is often all you need. Elaborate tracking systems become their own source of procrastination. What matters is that you have enough visibility to know whether your system is working and where it needs adjustment. And build in flexibility protocols, predetermined responses to common disruptions. What does your system look like when you're traveling? When you're sick? When an unexpected work crisis demands your full attention? Having these contingency plans in place keeps your momentum alive, even when life refuses to cooperate. When your system is well designed, personal reconstruction stops feeling like an act of heroic willpower and starts feeling like the natural rhythm of your days. You stop leaving your growth to chance. You stop waiting for the right moment. You simply do the work, one day, one component, one practiced habit at a time. Taking back your mind. Your brain is the most valuable piece of real estate in the world. And right now, there are trillion-dollar industries competing 24 hours a day to colonize it. Every app, every platform, every algorithm, every notification has been designed by some of the most brilliant minds on the planet, not to inform you, not to connect you, not to help you grow, but to capture your attention and hold it as long as possible, because your attention is the product, and it's being sold to the highest bidder, moment by moment, whether you realize it or not. The average American is now exposed to somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements daily. They spend roughly 7 hours staring at screens. They receive an average of 96 notifications before noon. Their brains process the equivalent of 5 times more information than Americans did in 1986. Your brain was not built for this volume of input, and the consequences are not just distraction. They are cognitive fragmentation. The inability to think deeply, to sustain attention, to sit with a problem long enough to actually solve it. The inability to be present for the things and people that matter most. Reclaiming your mind is not about becoming a technological hermit. It's about becoming intentional in a world designed to make you reactive. The first move is a distraction audit. For 1 full week, don't change anything. Just observe. Every time you reach for your phone without a specific reason, note it. Every time you open a tab out of restlessness rather than purpose, note it. Every time you check social media during a moment that could have been used for growth, note it. Don't judge. Just see. Most people are genuinely shocked by what they discover. Not because they are weak, but because these platforms are engineered specifically to bypass conscious decision-making. Once you have the data, implement what I call distraction barriers. Deliberate friction between you and your most compelling digital habits. Move social apps off your phone's home screen. Use browser extensions that block distracting sites during designated focus hours. Put your phone in another room during your morning self-focus time. The goal isn't to eliminate technology from your life. It's to make engagement with it a conscious choice rather than a compulsive reflex. Next, replace the distraction habit with a focus habit. Your brain has been conditioned to reach for stimulation the moment it encounters any empty space, any pause, any quiet moment, any mild discomfort. Instead of fighting that impulse, redirect it. When the urge to scroll surfaces, do 20 seconds of deep breathing. Review 1 line from your goal journal. Practice a skill for 5 minutes. Train the impulse toward production instead of consumption. Your physical environment needs to match your intentions. If your phone lives on your nightstand, it's the last thing you see before sleep and the first thing you reach for in the morning. If your TV is the focal point of your living room and your books are buried in a closet, your environment is designed for passive consumption. Architecture your space for the life you are trying to build, not the one you are trying to leave. Now for the more difficult part, the internal noise. External distractions are visible and manageable. Mental noise is subtler and more persistent. It is the anxiety loop that replays in the background, the rehearsed argument that never happened, the catastrophic scenario your brain constructs out of a single ambiguous email, the voice that interrupts your focus to remind you of something embarrassing that happened 2 years ago. This internal chatter is not thinking. Real thinking is purposeful, directed, and produces insight or decisions. Mental noise is circular, repetitive, and produces nothing except anxiety and fatigue. The antidote to mental noise is metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe your own thought processes without being pulled into them. Meditation builds this skill powerfully, but it doesn't require a cushion and incense. Simply spending 5 minutes watching your thoughts without engaging with them, the way you might watch cars pass on a highway, begins to create separation between you and the noise. You start to see thoughts as events in consciousness, not commands you must obey. Another powerful technique, thought scheduling. Rather than trying to suppress anxious or distracting thoughts during focus time, simply write them down. Tell your brain, I see you. We'll address this at 4 p.m., then return to the task at hand. Over time, this teaches your brain that not every thought requires immediate attention. The mental interruptions decrease significantly. Finally, your information diet. Just as consistently eating processed food degrades your physical health, consistently consuming low-quality information degrades your mental performance. Be as selective about what enters your mind as you are about what enters your body. Ask one simple question before consuming any piece of content. Is this making me better? Or is this just giving me something to feel? If the answer is the latter, put it down. Your ability to focus is the engine that drives everything else in this book. Protect it. Train it. Treat it as the competitive advantage it genuinely is. The discipline architecture. Almost everything you've been taught about willpower is wrong. Popular culture treats discipline like a character trait, something you either have or you don't. The disciplined people are the ones grinding through 5 IEM workouts and cold showers. The undisciplined ones are the rest of us, weak-willed and self-indulgent. This narrative is not only inaccurate, it's actively harmful, because it makes discipline feel like a fixed quality you were either born with or aren't. Here's the truth. Mental discipline is a skill, and like every skill, it can be trained, developed, and strengthened through deliberate practice. Your brain operates on 2 primary systems when it comes to decision-making. The limbic system, fast, emotional, impulse-driven, wants whatever feels best right now and will do almost anything to avoid short-term discomfort. The prefrontal cortex, slower, analytical, forward-thinking, can weigh consequences, consider long-term impact, and make decisions aligned with your values rather than your momentary feelings. Mental discipline is the ongoing practice of activating the prefrontal cortex in moments when the limbic system is screaming for the easy option. But here's the critical insight. You don't build discipline by waging war against your impulses. You build it by designing systems so intelligent that the right choices require less cognitive effort than the wrong ones. This is called cognitive load management. When decision-making is effortful, you default to whatever requires the least resistance, which is almost always the established pattern. So the strategy isn't to rely on motivation when your discipline is low. It's to make disciplined choices automatic and undisciplined choices inconvenient. Want to exercise consistently? Eliminate decision fatigue the night before. Lay out your gear, schedule the specific time, create a playlist, establish a route. The workout should require 0 decisions in the moment. Want to stop reaching for your phone at night? Put it in a different room before you even feel the temptation. The temptation bypassed is energy saved for something better. Begin building your discipline architecture with micro-disciplines. Tiny commitments that seem almost trivially small, but serve a profound neurological purpose. Make your bed every morning. Drink a full glass of water before checking your phone. Do 10 push-ups when you feel the urge to scroll. Write 3 sentences in your journal before going to bed. These micro-disciplines are not about the actions themselves. They are about training your brain through repeated experience that choosing short-term effort produces long-term reward. Every small commitment you keep is a deposit in your self-trust account. Every commitment you break is a withdrawal. Over time, the balance in that account determines how confident you are in your own word to yourself. Progressive overload applies to mental strength exactly the way it applies to physical strength. You don't walk into a gym on day 1 and attempt a world record. You begin where you are, add incremental challenge as you adapt, and trust the cumulative effect of consistent progressive effort. If you currently can't focus for more than 10 minutes without reaching for your phone, don't try to jump to 2 hours. Extend it to 12 minutes, then 15, then 20. Give your brain time to adapt to each new demand before increasing it. Implementation intentions are one of the most research-supported tools for building discipline. Rather than vague commitments, I'll exercise more. Create specific if-then plans. If it's 6:30 a.m. on a weekday, then I'm doing my morning workout. No negotiation. If I feel the urge to check social media during work hours, then I'll close the app and do 60 seconds of deep breathing. If I want to skip my journaling, then I'll commit to just 3 sentences and see how I feel. These if-then plans remove the mental negotiation that depletes willpower in real time. When the situation arises, you don't deliberate, you execute. One more thing that most conversations about discipline skip entirely. Self-compassion is not the enemy of high standards. The most disciplined people aren't the ones who punish themselves viciously for every lapse. They're the ones who maintain the shortest possible gap between a setback and a return to their standard. They acknowledge the slip without catastrophizing it, extract any useful lesson, and get back on track without drama. Perfection is a myth. Recovery speed is the real measure of discipline. And here's what makes discipline sustainable over the long term. It must be connected to something you genuinely care about. Discipline driven by fear or shame burns out. Discipline driven by a clear, compelling vision of who you are becoming and why it matters can sustain you through almost anything. When you know exactly why you're doing the hard thing gets easier. The performance body. Here is something the productivity world consistently gets wrong. They separate the mind from the body as though they are different departments in the same company. They are not. They are one integrated system, and the state of that system, physically, determines the quality of everything else you do. Your brain runs on biology. Its ability to focus, to regulate emotion, to sustain creative effort, to recover from stress, all of it is directly and measurably influenced by how you treat your body. Optimize the biology, and you upgrade every mental and emotional capability you have. Neglect it, and you are trying to run advanced software on a dying battery. Research consistently shows that people who maintain regular physical activity demonstrate superior cognitive function, better emotional regulation, faster learning, stronger decision-making, and significantly greater resilience under stress. Exercise is not a cosmetic activity. It is neurological medicine. When you exercise, your brain produces BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that literally promotes the growth of new neural connections and protects existing brain cells. It's been called miracle grow for the brain. Exercise also triggers the release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, not just improving your mood in the moment, but raising your baseline emotional resilience over time. But physical optimization is a broader concept than just working out. Sleep is the foundation of everything. During sleep, your brain consolidates the day's learning into long-term memory, processes emotional experiences, clears metabolic waste products, and prepares the prefrontal cortex, your discipline and decision-making center, for the next day. Chronic poor sleep doesn't just make you tired. It impairs judgment, reduces willpower, blunts creativity, and spikes emotional reactivity. It is functionally equivalent to showing up every day mildly intoxicated. Optimize your sleep by protecting consistent sleep and wake times. Even on weekends, create a sleep environment that is cool, dark, and quiet. In the final hour before bed, eliminate screens, reduce stimulation, and signal to your nervous system that it is time to wind down. This pre-sleep ritual is as important as the sleep itself. Nutrition affects your brain chemistry more directly than most people appreciate. Your brain consumes roughly 20% of your daily caloric intake, and it performs best when that fuel is stable, clean, and consistent. Sharp spikes and crashes in blood sugar, caused by processed foods, excess refined sugar, and erratic meal timing, translate directly into brain fog, mood instability, and decreased concentration. Build your diet around foods that provide sustained energy, quality proteins, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, and abundant vegetables. The goal isn't nutritional perfection. It's consistent fuel that supports stable, clear performance. Hydration is chronically underestimated. Even mild dehydration, as little as 1 to 2% of body weight, measurably impairs concentration, memory retrieval, and mood. Most Americans are mildly dehydrated most of the time, particularly those who drink coffee or alcohol regularly. Start every morning with 16 to 20 ounces of water before anything else. Keep water visible and accessible throughout the day. It's one of the lowest cost, highest return optimizations available to you. Posture is not an aesthetic concern. It is a physiological signal. Collapsed, forward-leaning posture physically constricts your breathing, reduces blood flow to the brain, and triggers the nervous system's stress response. Research from Harvard and Columbia showed that open, upright posture doesn't just reflect confidence, it generates it. Correcting your posture during important activities, deep work, planning, difficult conversations, measurably improves focus and emotional state. Breathing is the most accessible and immediate performance tool you have. The way you breathe directly regulates your nervous system. Shallow, chest-dominant breathing activates the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight mode, keeping you in a low-grade state of stress that exhausts your cognitive resources. Deep, diaphragmatic breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest mode, promoting calm alertness and optimal cognition. Practice this cycle regularly. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 to 8. 4 or 5 rounds of this can measurably shift your physiological state within minutes. Use it before high-stakes situations, during moments of stress, or as part of your morning protocol. Recovery is not weakness. It is strategy. High performance, physical or mental, requires cycles of stress and recovery. The stress is where the stimulus happens. The recovery is where the adaptation occurs. Skipping recovery doesn't make you tougher. It makes you chronically degraded. Build genuine rest into your system. Sleep, active recovery movement, mental downtime, and periodic periods of low-intensity living. The specific exercise modality matters less than consistency. Find physical activities that you genuinely enjoy. Strength training, running, yoga, rock climbing, team sports, cycling, swimming, and do them with regularity. The best exercise program is the one you actually maintain. Choose for enjoyment and sustainability over intensity and impressiveness. When your body is strong, energized, and well-maintained, every other aspect of personal reconstruction becomes dramatically easier. You think more clearly. You regulate emotions more effectively. You sustain effort longer. You recover from setbacks faster. You simply perform at a higher level across every dimension. Your body is not a vehicle for transporting your head to meetings. It is the foundation of everything. Emotional intelligence as a superpower. The most misunderstood idea in the entire self-improvement space is this: strong people don't feel less. They feel better. Emotional mastery is not about becoming stoic, detached, or unmoved by the events of your life. It's about developing the sophistication to feel your emotions fully while choosing your response deliberately. The difference between being emotional and being emotionally intelligent is not the presence or absence of feeling. It's the relationship you have with what you feel. Most people are governed by their emotions rather than in dialogue with them. They experience a feeling and immediately become it, reacting, escalating, or suppressing it, without ever pausing to ask what it's actually trying to tell them. Here's the foundational insight. Emotions are not facts. They are interpretations. They arise from the meaning your nervous system assigns to events, filtered through your personal history, beliefs, and current physiological state. Two people can sit in the same meeting, hear the same feedback, and one walks out feeling devastated while the other feels motivated. The event was identical. The emotional response was not, because emotions emerge from interpretation, and interpretation is something you can learn to influence. The first step toward emotional mastery is emotional awareness, developing the granularity to accurately identify what you're actually feeling, rather than lumping everything into stressed, upset, or fine. Research by Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett shows that people with richer emotional vocabularies, the ability to distinguish between frustration and disappointment, between anxiety and excitement, between sadness and grief, have significantly better outcomes in health, relationships, and mental well-being. This is called emotional granularity, and it matters because different emotions carry different information and call for different responses. Frustration might be telling you that a current approach isn't working, and it's time to adapt your strategy. Anxiety might be pointing to a preparation gap that needs attention. Anger might be signaling that a boundary has been crossed and needs to be addressed clearly. Excitement might be confirmation that you're moving toward something that genuinely matters to you. When you can read these signals with accuracy, you can respond to them with precision, rather than reacting indiscriminately to a vague emotional storm. Practice checking in with yourself throughout the day. Pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? Where do I notice it in my body? What triggered it? What is it trying to communicate? This habit of internal inquiry builds the self-awareness that makes everything else in emotional mastery possible. Cognitive reappraisal is one of the most powerful tools for shifting emotional states without suppression. It involves consciously changing the interpretation of a situation to generate a different emotional response. This is not denial or toxic positivity. It is the recognition that most situations can be viewed through multiple legitimate lenses, and that some of those lenses serve you better than others. If you feel anxious before a significant presentation, you can reinterpret that physiological arousal as preparation energy, because anxiety and excitement produce nearly identical bodily sensations. The only difference is the story you attach to them. If you receive critical feedback on your work, you can reinterpret it as precision data pointing toward improvement, because it usually is. The situation hasn't changed. Your relationship to it has, and that relationship determines your emotional state and your behavioral response. Breathing is your fastest tool for in-the-moment emotional regulation. When a strong emotion arises, anger, anxiety, overwhelm, your breathing typically becomes shallow and rapid, which intensifies the emotional experience and reduces access to clear thinking. 5 slow, deep breaths before responding to any high-stakes situation activates the parasympathetic system, reduces cortisol, and gives your prefrontal cortex time to engage before your limbic system takes over. This pause is not passive. It is one of the most powerful active choices you can make. Physical movement processes emotional energy that has no other outlet. Emotions are biological events. They create actual physical energy in the body that needs somewhere to go. A brisk walk during anger, jumping jacks during anxiety, dancing during joy. These aren't cliches. They are physiologically sound methods for metabolizing emotional energy and returning to a regulated state. Emotional boundaries, the ability to distinguish between your emotions and other people's, are essential for maintaining your psychological integrity. You can be deeply compassionate without absorbing everyone else's emotional weather. You can be fully present for someone's pain without taking it on as your own. This is not coldness. It is sustainability. If you dissolve into other people's emotional states, you cannot be consistently helpful to anyone. Build the habit of regularly noticing positive emotional states with the same attention you give to difficult ones. Gratitude, curiosity, enthusiasm, pride, warmth, awe. These are not trivial feelings. They are the neurochemical conditions under which your best thinking, most creative work, and most resilient behavior occur. Cultivate them intentionally. Emotional mastery is a practice that deepens across a lifetime, but every step you take toward greater emotional intelligence makes every other dimension of your reconstruction faster, smoother, and more sustainable. Learning faster than the world changes. In 2025, the half-life of a professional skill is approximately 5 years. The world is not waiting for you to feel ready. The rate of change has outpaced the traditional learning timeline, and that means the ability to acquire new capabilities quickly is no longer an advantage reserved for a gifted few. It is a survival requirement for everyone. Here is the difference between people who adapt successfully and people who get left behind. The former have learned how to learn. Most people approach skill acquisition the same way they were taught in school. Sit, receive information, retain information, reproduce it on demand. This model was designed for a stable world. It doesn't work in a rapidly shifting one, and it was never particularly efficient anyway. Accelerated learning starts with understanding a foundational truth. Skills are built through practice, not exposure. Reading about negotiation does not make you a better negotiator. Watching videos about leadership does not make you a better leader. You can consume infinite content about a capability without actually developing it. The research is unambiguous. Deliberate practice, focused, intentional, feedback-rich repetition at the edge of your current ability is what builds genuine competence. Everything else is preparation. This means your ratio should be roughly 20% learning, 80% practice. Get oriented, get the conceptual framework, identify the key principles, then spend the vast majority of your time actually doing the thing. What makes practice deliberate rather than just repetitive? 3 elements. Clear objectives for each session. What specific aspect am I improving today? Immediate feedback on your performance. Am I getting better, and how do I know? and conscious effort to address specific weaknesses rather than just reinforcing existing strengths. Apply the 80-20 principle ruthlessly to every skill you pursue. In any capability, roughly 20% of the components produce 80% of the results. Your job as an efficient learner is to identify those high-leverage elements first and master them before adding complexity. In language learning, this means mastering the 1,000 most commonly used words before memorizing obscure vocabulary. In coding, it means internalizing the fundamental structures that appear in every program before learning advanced frameworks. In public speaking, it means mastering clarity and authenticity before working on theatrical delivery. Find the highest leverage 20% and go deep there first. You will achieve functional competence far faster than someone who tries to master everything simultaneously. Spaced repetition is how you convert short-term performance into permanent skill. Your brain strengthens neural pathways through repeated activation over distributed time. Cramming produces temporary recall. Spaced practice, returning to material after strategic intervals, slightly before the memory fades, creates lasting consolidation. This principle applies beyond traditional studying. Practice a skill intensively, then step back. Return to it the next day, then 2 days later, then 5. The spacing creates the chemical conditions in the brain that encode information deeply. Mental models are frameworks that allow you to organize and transfer knowledge across domains. Rather than learning isolated facts and techniques, learn the underlying principles that connect ideas. The law of leverage in physics applies to business strategy and relationship negotiation. The feedback loop principle in systems theory applies to habit formation, organizational behavior, and software development. Every mental model you internalize accelerates learning in every adjacent domain. Teaching is one of the most powerful learning tools available and the most consistently underused. When you explain something to another person, you are forced to organize your understanding, surface your gaps, and confront the difference between recognizing something and actually knowing it. The questions they ask reveal blind spots you didn't know you had. Find ways to teach every skill you're developing. Write about it. Mentor someone. Explain it to a curious friend. The act of articulating knowledge cements it. Embrace failure as signal, not shame. Your brain learns by making predictions, testing them against reality, and adjusting based on the results. A mistake is your brain receiving updated data. The faster you fail, the faster you learn, provided you debrief each failure with curiosity rather than condemning it with judgment. Ask after every significant attempt. What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently? These 3 questions convert every experience, successful or failed, into accelerated development. Finally, every skill you choose to develop should be in service of your Reconstruction vision. It's easy to chase fascinating knowledge without direction. Be strategic. Identify the specific capabilities that will most directly move you toward the person you are becoming, and invest your learning capital there first. The momentum principle. There is a physics concept that perfectly describes personal transformation. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Once you build genuine forward momentum in your Reconstruction, maintaining it becomes easier than stopping. The system acquires its own energy. Progress generates more motivation for progress. Each completed action makes the next action more likely, and eventually you reach a tipping point where growth is no longer something you have to force. It becomes the natural default state of your daily life. But getting to that tipping point is where most people struggle, because the beginning is always the hardest part. The initial momentum has to be built deliberately, carefully and with the understanding that the goal is not to change everything at once. The goal is to keep moving. The concept of minimum viable progress is your most important tool in the early stages of reconstruction. It is the smallest possible action you can take each day that still maintains forward motion. Not the most impressive action, not the action that would make the highlight reel. The action that ensures you never have a full stop. 1 page read, 5 minutes practiced, 3 sentences written, 1 conversation had, 1 healthy meal chosen. The size of the action matters far less than the fact that it happens. Because every day you follow through on a commitment to yourself, even a small one, you are making a deposit in your self-trust account. You are accumulating evidence that you are someone who does what they say. And that identity evidence compounds over time into the kind of unshakable confidence that is genuinely earned rather than performed. Every day you break a commitment to yourself, even a small one, is a withdrawal. This is why setting impossibly high daily standards in the beginning almost always backfires. You need a minimum standard that you can maintain even on your hardest days. Because consistency over time crushes intensity over short periods. Every single time. Energy management matters as much as time management, arguably more. You have different qualities of energy available at different points of the day. Sharp, creative, analytical, physical, reflective. Matching the right activity to the right energy state is the difference between struggling through your most important work in a depleted state and doing it in a flow state that feels almost effortless. Know your peak mental energy window. Protect it for your highest leverage self-focus activities. Stop trying to do deep creative work at the end of a mentally exhausting day. Stop trying to have your best workouts when you're physically depleted. Work with your biology, not against it. Track leading indicators, not just lagging ones. A leading indicator is something you control directly. Pages read today, minutes practice, workouts completed, journal entries written. A lagging indicator is the result those actions eventually produce. Fluency, skill level, fitness, insight. Lagging indicators change slowly and can be influenced by factors outside your control. Leading indicators give you immediate feedback that you can act on now. Focus your daily tracking on. Did I do what I said I would do today? That's the number that determines everything else. Celebrate consistently, but genuinely. Your brain requires positive reinforcement to maintain patterns over time. Acknowledging your effort and consistency isn't self-indulgence. It is neurological maintenance. The acknowledgement can be simple. A genuine moment of satisfaction, a check mark in a journal, a mental note of, I kept my word today. Build celebration into the system so your brain associates the disciplined choice with a positive experience, strengthening the neural pathway for next time. Prepare for obstacles before they appear. Identify the most common disruptions to your consistency: travel, illness, major work deadlines, family events, and create specific plans for each one. What does your minimum viable system look like when you're on a business trip? When you're sick? When everything explodes at work? Having these contingency plans in place means you never have to make a decision under pressure about whether to maintain your practices. You already decided. You just follow the plan. Finally, protect your social environment with the same care you give your physical environment. The momentum of the people around you is contagious. Surround yourself with others who are also committed to growth, and their consistency will support yours. Spend the majority of your time with people whose habits, standards, and energy are aligned with the person you are becoming, not the person you are trying to leave behind. The power of deliberate solitude. In a culture that treats constant connectivity as a virtue and silence as something to be escaped, the ability to be alone with your own thoughts has become genuinely rare, and therefore genuinely powerful. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is not isolation. Solitude is the intentional practice of spending uninterrupted time with yourself, without the background noise of other people's opinions, content, or demands, for the specific purpose of thinking deeply, reflecting honestly, and becoming more fully acquainted with your own mind. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with genuine solitude. They fill every quiet moment, the commute, the elevator, the bathroom, the space between activities, with podcasts, music, social scrolling, or any other input that prevents them from having to sit with themselves. This is not laziness. It's a learned avoidance of discomfort that our media landscape has made extraordinarily easy to maintain. But here's what is happening inside the brain during genuine solitude, during those quiet, undirected moments. That cannot happen any other way. Your brain shifts from reactive processing to generative thinking. It stops responding to inputs and starts producing original thought. Connections form between ideas that were previously isolated. Solutions surface that couldn't break through the noise. Insights emerge that no amount of content consumption could have provided. The most important thinking of your life, the thinking that shapes your values, clarifies your direction, and reveals what you actually believe, happens in silence, not in your feeds. Psychologists describe a process called self-integration, the way the brain connects disparate experiences, emotions, and information into a coherent sense of identity and direction. This process requires genuine downtime. It is why you often have your best ideas in the shower, on a long walk, or during a quiet drive. Your brain is doing integration work that the constant input of modern life prevents. Regular solitude practice creates psychological independence, the ability to know your own mind rather than being a mirror of whatever content you last consumed. When you spend time regularly in reflection, you begin to distinguish between what you actually think and what you've absorbed from media, culture, or the people around you. This distinction is foundational for building authentic confidence and making decisions aligned with your actual values. Begin with scheduled solitude. Set aside a specific time, even 10 minutes, each day where there are zero inputs. No phone, no music, no podcast, no book. Just you and whatever arises in your mind. Sit with the discomfort if it arises. Let your attention wander without trying to direct or control it. Simply observe what surfaces when you stop feeding your brain and let it work on its own. Journaling amplifies the power of solitude by giving form to the formless. Writing converts vague emotional currents and half-finished thoughts into concrete language, which is how your brain actually processes and integrates experience. Stream of consciousness journaling, writing continuously without editing or self-censoring for a set period, bypasses the internal critic and allows deeper material to surface. The insights that emerge often surprise people. They were always there, waiting under the noise. Use solitude for perspective thinking, deliberately imagining and planning your future. When you are not reacting to immediate demands, you can think clearly and strategically about where you are heading and what it will take to get there. Visualize the person you are becoming with as much sensory detail as possible. What does your day look like? How do you carry yourself? How do you respond to difficulty? How do you show up for the people who matter to you? This is not fantasy. Neuroscience shows that vividly imagining future behaviors activates many of the same neural pathways as actually performing them. Mental rehearsal is genuine rehearsal. Use solitude to process the difficult emotions and experiences that the pace of modern life encourages you to bypass. Grief, disappointment, fear, and confusion don't disappear. Because you stay busy, they accumulate and eventually surface as anxiety, reactivity, or behavioral patterns that undermine your reconstruction without your understanding why. Sit with the uncomfortable feeling. Ask it, what are you trying to tell me? What need is unmet? What situation requires my honest attention? This kind of emotional processing builds the self-awareness and internal stability that no amount of peak performance tactics can replace. As you develop comfort with solitude, something remarkable happens. You begin to crave it. Not because you become antisocial, but because you discover that your own mind, when given space to work, is the richest, most generative, most trustworthy resource you have. Editing your environment, people included here, is a truth that makes most people uncomfortable. You cannot outperform your environment, not indefinitely, not with willpower alone. The invisible pressures of the spaces, systems, and especially the people you spend the most time with will eventually shape you, whether you intend them to or not. This is not weakness. It is neuroscience. Your brain is a social organ designed to pick up cues from the surrounding environment and calibrate behavior accordingly, which means the single most important environmental variable in your reconstruction is the people you keep closest. Relationships are never neutral. Every person you spend significant time with is either adding energy, perspective, and forward momentum to your growth, or they are draining it. Either they are modeling the kind of life, habits, and standards you want to cultivate, or they are reinforcing the patterns you are trying to leave behind. Recognizing this is not cynicism. It is clarity. And acting on it is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. Toxic relationships come in many forms. Some are obvious, abusive, manipulative, or consistently destructive people who leave you feeling worse about yourself after every interaction. These need to be removed from your life as directly and completely as possible. But the more insidious toxic relationships are the subtle ones. The friend who consistently responds to your ambitious goals with, "Be realistic." The family member who frames your changing habits as you, thinking you're better than everyone. The colleague who fills every interaction with complaint and catastrophe and subtly invites you to join. These relationships aren't dramatic. They are corrosive. And because the damage accumulates slowly, people often tolerate them for years without recognizing the cumulative cost. Conduct a relationship audit, honest, unsentimental, and clear-eyed. Write down the names of the people you spend the most time with. After a typical interaction with each person, how do you feel? Energized or drained? Inspired or discouraged? Clearer about your direction or murkier? These patterns, observed honestly over time, reveal which relationships are supporting your reconstruction and which ones are actively working against it. For relationships that need to end them with as much grace as possible. But do not delay the ending out of guilt or sentimentality. You are not responsible for other people's emotional reactions to your healthy choices. You are responsible for creating conditions that support your growth. For relationships that cannot be fully ended, family members, co-workers, long-standing friendships, boundaries are the tool. You cannot always control who is in your life. You can control how much access they have to your time, your energy, and your emotional state. You can end conversations that become consistently negative. You can decline to discuss your goals with people who consistently undermine them. You can limit frequency of contact with people who drain your resources without returning equivalent value. Energy vampires deserve particular attention. These are people who seem to require constant emotional input from you without reciprocating, perpetual victims of circumstances who refuse to act, chronic complainers who reject solutions, or individuals for whom every conversation is an extended performance of their personal drama. Recognize the pattern. Set time limits on interactions. Refuse to engage with repetitive, circular complaints. Redirect conversations toward possibility and action. If the pattern persists, reduce contact significantly. Watch carefully for jealousy and resistance as you begin to grow. This is almost universally reported by people who commit to serious personal reconstruction. People who claim to care about them become strange when the growth becomes visible. They make comments about you changing. They bring up old versions of you as though they were superior. They react to your discipline as a judgment of their own lack of it. Their discomfort is not about you. It is about them. Do not let their reaction to your growth slow your growth. Now, the other side of this work, actively building relationships that elevate you. As you change, you naturally become drawn to different people. Those who share your commitment to growth, who operate at a high standard, who inspire and challenge rather than drag and diminish. Seek these relationships intentionally. Invest in them consistently. Be the kind of person worth knowing by being genuinely interested, consistently reliable, and willing to contribute to others' growth. Mentorship, both receiving and eventually giving, compresses the learning curve of personal reconstruction dramatically. Finding even one person who has navigated the territory you are trying to cross and learning from their experience saves you years of trial and error. And in time, becoming that person for someone else multiplies the impact of your own journey. The goal is not to live in a hermetically sealed environment of perfect people. It is to be intentional enough about your social investment that your inner circle consistently pulls you toward your best self rather than back toward your former one. Thinking at a higher level, the ceiling on your life is not your circumstances. It is not your background. It is not your resources. It is the quality of your thinking, the problems you can solve, the opportunities you can recognize, the decisions you make under pressure. All of these are determined by the mental models you have access to and how well you deploy them. And most people are operating with a default set of mental models inherited from family, culture, and schooling, none of which were designed for the kind of deliberate, ambitious reconstruction you are undertaking. Upgrading your thinking is one of the highest leverage investments you can make. Growth mindset, the foundational insight from psychologist Carol Dweck, is the belief that intelligence, talent, and ability are not fixed quantities, but capacities that develop through deliberate effort and learning. People with a growth mindset interpret challenges as opportunities to build new capabilities. They see failure as feedback. They view the word yet as one of the most powerful words in the English language. I haven't mastered this yet. People with a fixed mindset, by contrast, avoid challenges that might reveal their limitations. They interpret effort as evidence that they lack natural talent. They take feedback personally, and they frequently leave their potential permanently unclaimed because they are more committed to protecting their current self-image than developing a more capable one. The growth mindset is not something you are born with or without. It is a cognitive habit, and like all habits, it can be trained. Systems thinking reveals the interconnected loops and patterns behind events that appear to be isolated incidents. When you think in systems, you stop asking who is to blame and start asking what structural pattern produced this outcome. This shift dramatically improves both problem-solving and self-understanding. Rather than judging yourself for repeating a particular pattern, you can ask, what is the system of beliefs, environments, habits, and relationships that keeps generating this pattern. Change the system, and the pattern changes. Compound effect thinking reveals how small, consistent inputs create exponential outputs over time. The reason most people underinvest in personal development is that the returns in the early stages are invisible. One workout doesn't transform your body. One focused learning session doesn't produce mastery. But 1,000 workouts do, and 1,000 focused sessions do. Compound effect thinking gives you the patience to maintain consistent effort through the long period before the results become visible, because you understand, at a mathematical level, that those results are inevitable. First principles thinking. The method made famous by people like Elon Musk and Richard Feynman involves breaking a complex problem down to its most fundamental, irreducible truths and building solutions back up from there rather than from convention or assumption. For personal reconstruction, this means questioning the inherited beliefs and cultural assumptions that form the substrate of your current life. Is it actually true that people like me don't achieve X? What is the actual evidence for that belief? Where did it come from? Is it a first principle or an assumption I absorbed? Most limiting beliefs dissolve under the light of first principles analysis. They were never principles at all, just unexamined assumptions. Inversion is the habit of approaching a problem by asking what would guarantee failure, then systematically avoiding those things. Instead of only asking, how do I build extraordinary discipline? Ask what specific behaviors, environments, and beliefs would guarantee that I never develop discipline. Then, eliminate those. Often, avoiding failure is a clearer path than chasing success. Second-order thinking asks not just what will happen next, but what will happen as a result of what happens next. Most people think one step ahead. Second-order thinkers think 2 or 3 steps ahead, anticipating unintended consequences and longer-term effects that first-order thinking misses entirely. Before making significant decisions in your reconstruction, ask, if this works exactly as intended, then what? And what happens then? Probabilistic thinking replaces certainty with calibrated probability, recognizing that most outcomes are not predetermined, but fall within a range of likelihoods that can be estimated and prepared for. This mental model reduces anxiety about uncertain outcomes because you stop demanding certainty in an uncertain world, and improves decision quality because you make choices based on realistic probabilities rather than best-case or worst-case scenarios alone. These models are not just theoretical frameworks. They are cognitive tools to be practiced daily. Apply them to the real decisions you face about your time, your learning, your relationships, your career, your habits. Over time, upgraded thinking becomes your default mode of operation. And when you think better, you live better. Designing your personal operating system. Imagine 2 computers, same hardware, same processor, same memory, but completely different operating systems. One runs smooth, fast, and reliably. The other crashes constantly, runs conflicting programs, and operates at a fraction of its theoretical capability. The difference is not the hardware. The difference is the software. Your life runs on a personal operating system, a collection of beliefs, habits, routines, decision frameworks, and environmental conditions that determine how you function day to day, how you respond to challenges, and what results you are capable of producing. Most people inherited their operating system from childhood, culture, and circumstance, and have never deliberately upgraded it. Personal reconstruction at its deepest level is the process of replacing inherited software with a consciously designed system that serves who you are becoming rather than who you have been. This process begins with diagnosis. You cannot upgrade a system you haven't honestly assessed. What beliefs do you currently hold about your own capabilities, your potential, and what is possible for your life? Which of these beliefs are actually true, upon examination, and which are simply assumptions you've carried so long they feel like facts. Common, outdated beliefs that clog people's operating systems. I'm not disciplined enough for this. People in my family don't succeed at this level. I missed my window. I'm too old/young/inexperienced. Significant change is too painful to sustain. These are not facts. They are old code, and old code can be replaced. The belief layer is the foundation. Everything else in your operating system runs on top of it. A person who genuinely believes they are capable of growth will interpret challenges as development opportunities. A person who believes they are fundamentally limited will interpret those same challenges as confirmation of their inadequacy. The event is identical. The operating system determines the output. Upgrading beliefs requires two moves: rational and experiential. Rationally, you challenge the limiting belief by examining its actual evidence base. Find examples of people with circumstances similar to yours who achieved what you want to achieve. Study the specific strategies and mindsets that produce those outcomes. Recognize that your belief was drawn from a limited sample of data, usually your own past experience, and that a larger data set tells a different story. Experientially, you take action that produces evidence contradicting the old belief. You cannot think your way out of a limiting belief. You have to act your way out. Set a challenge that stretches your current self-concept without overwhelming it. When you succeed, even partially, you have new evidence to work with. Build on it. The routine layer forms the daily structure of your operating system. Your morning and evening routines are particularly powerful because they govern the beginning and end of every day. The bookends that determine how you enter and exit each 24 hours. A morning routine that builds internal strength before external demands begin is one of the highest leverage practices available. Design routines that feel sustainable, meaningful, and genuinely enjoyable, not punitive. If your routines feel like punishment, you will eventually stage a psychological revolt. Find the version of each practice that actually resonates with you rather than the version that looks most impressive to an imaginary audience. The decision framework layer governs how you evaluate choices and respond to opportunities. Most people make decisions reactively, based on immediate emotional impulse, social pressure, or the path of least resistance. A deliberate decision framework means establishing criteria in advance for how you will evaluate common choices. How do I decide how to spend discretionary time? What criteria qualify a new commitment as worthy of my energy? How do I know when a relationship is worth investing in deeply? Having clear answers to these questions in advance removes the emotional negotiation from moment of decision, which is always when your judgment is most compromised. The environmental layer governs the physical and social conditions that surround your daily behavior. Your environment should be designed to make the behaviors you want automatic and the behaviors you want to eliminate inconvenient. Every element of your space, what is visible, what is accessible, what is present, is either voting for your best self or your old one. Audit your space. What changes would make your desired behaviors significantly easier? What would you remove to reduce the friction of maintaining your standards? Build regular operating system reviews into your calendar. Brief weekly reviews to assess your daily consistency, monthly reviews to evaluate your trajectory, and quarterly reviews to assess whether your entire system is still calibrated toward the right vision. Systems that are never reviewed quietly drift. Systems that are regularly reviewed and adjusted continue to improve. This is the architecture of a life you have designed rather than a life you stumbled into. And it is available to anyone willing to do the work. The transformed life. And now, the part no one can fully prepare you for. The changes that come from sustained, committed, daily self-reconstruction don't arrive in a single dramatic moment. They arrive gradually, then all at once. For months, you may feel like you are improving, practicing, building, but that you are still fundamentally the same person. And then, one ordinary morning, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror. Not literally, but internally. And you realize that the person looking back has almost nothing in common with the version who started this journey. The way you think, the way you respond to setbacks, the way you carry yourself in a room, the standards you hold, the relationships you choose, the work you produce, the problems you solve, the fears that no longer slow you down. All of it is different. This is the transformation that awaits on the other side of everything this audiobook has covered. And it is not a fantasy. It is the documented, reproducible, universal result of anyone who commits to daily self-focus with genuine intention over sufficient time. Let me paint the picture in specific terms. Your relationship with difficulty changes completely. You stop treating challenges as threats and start treating them as the training equipment they actually are. Problems don't disappear from your life, but your capacity to solve them grows so dramatically that problems which once paralyzed you become interesting puzzles you actually enjoy engaging with. Your relationships transform. When you operate from genuine internal strength rather than unmet needs, you stop requiring others to manage your emotional state for you. You stop tolerating dynamics that diminish you. You naturally attract people who share your standards, and you show up for them with a quality of presence, reliability, and generosity that was simply unavailable before. Your professional performance accelerates, not just because you are more skilled, though you will be, but because you are more disciplined, more focused, more emotionally regulated under pressure, and more capable of sustained effort toward a long-term vision. These qualities compound in professional environments the same way they compound personally. Your physical health improves, even if that was never the primary focus. The habits of discipline, self-care, and intentional living that develop your mind and character inevitably touch your body as well. You sleep better, eat with more intention, move with more consistency, and manage stress with far greater effectiveness. Your body becomes a reflection of the internal work rather than a burden you're managing. Your relationship with time changes. Instead of feeling chronically rushed, perpetually behind, and overwhelmed by an endless list, you develop a quality of intentionality that makes time feel more spacious. You stop doing things because they appeared on your calendar or because someone expected them of you, and start doing things because they align with your values and advance your vision. The activities that were draining your energy disappear as if by themselves. The internal dialogue shifts, perhaps most profoundly of all. The constant background noise of self-criticism, comparison, doubt, and inadequacy, which you have lived with so long, you may have assumed it was simply the human condition, gradually quiets. It is replaced by something that most people don't discover until they've done the work. Genuine self-respect. Not the performed confidence that covers insecurity, the real thing. The kind that doesn't need external validation to sustain itself. You become someone others look to, not because you sought influence, but because you earned it through the visible evidence of your own transformation. People are drawn to those who have clearly done the internal work. Your presence becomes a permission slip for others who are trying to build the same thing in themselves. This is the compounding return on everything you've invested in reading this book, applying these principles, and choosing, day after day, to make yourself your primary mission. You become living proof that reconstruction is possible, that it's not reserved for people with perfect circumstances or extraordinary genetics or advantageous starting positions, that it's available to anyone, at any age, from any background, regardless of what has happened before, who decides with conviction and without apology that they are going to invest in becoming the best version of themselves. And that choice, to decide, is the only thing that was ever in the way. You already made it. Now, keep going.